In today's video, what your money can buy for $525,000 at Lakeshore and Bathurst. That's right, welcome to another edition of what your money can buy in Toronto real estate. As always in this series, once I've purchased a unit or sold a unit for a client, when I get an opportunity, I'm going to film the property, whether it's a freehold property, a condo, a detached, a two-story townhome, whatever it is. I'm going to film it and show it to you. And not just for a property tour, but also to tell you what it says about the Toronto real estate market at large. Use it as a jumping off point to teach you more about the market, teach you more about the buildings, the area, and everything else in between. In today's video, I'm going to show you my latest purchase at 80 Queen Wharf, which was a 1-bedroom, 1-washroom unit, which I purchased for a client of mine just a couple of months back at $525,000. around $70,000 to $90,000 below market value. I want to tell you how this distressed sale came about and how we were able to find it and take advantage of this distressed sale and get it way below market value. But before we get inside, as always, if you find this type of content informative, feel free to subscribe and follow for more for a lot of different type of content. You can also find my contact information in the description box. Now, enough of all that. Before we get on going inside to show you the unit and tell you more about the transaction, let me tell you a little bit more about the area. It is 80 Queen Wharf, and you might be familiar with the Queen Wharf buildings. If you're not, take a look at this video. I've always found Queen Wharf to be a very odd name, but you've undoubtedly come across the Queen Wharf condos in downtown Toronto. All in all, you're looking at 5 residential buildings, 70, 75, 80, 85, and 90 Queen Wharf, all within an immediate distance of each other. 70 and 90 are technically one building, and so are 75 and 85, although 2 separate structures, legally 1 building. Let's start with 75. 75 is probably the most affordable. All in all, in this area, the Queen Wharf area, you can think of it as a sub-community of a sub-community. In the larger community, it's the cityplace condos, which you know from my channel, I'm not the biggest fan of cityplace condos. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely some really bad buildings in the cityplace condos. There are some okay buildings at best in the cityplace condos. But the Queen Wharf condos are a set of condos that you can think of as a sub-community of a sub-community. So between 70 Queen Wharf and 90 Queen Wharf, there are all in all about 4 to 5 residential buildings. And in my professional opinion, out of all of them, the second best is 75 Queen Wharf. It has its problems. It's not a great building by any means. It's just merely an okay building. And to be very fair with you, one of Concord's best buildings, in my opinion, thus far, is the one we're talking about today, is 80 Queen Wharf. Once again, this is coming from a guy who's not the biggest fan of Concord. So enough of all that, let me show you the unit and tell you a little bit more about the transaction. So let's go on up. All right, guys, so we're here in front of the unit. As I mentioned, it is on the 3rd floor. So let's take a look at the unit, and as we go along, I'll explain more about the transaction. Come on in. Anyways, we're inside the unit, and one of the first things you'll notice, it's the first things I noticed, it's the first thing my client noticed, is that it is completely concrete. It's as if you're inside a cinder block. I mean, take a look at the flooring. It's completely concrete exposed flooring. And cameraman, come here please if you can. If you can get a shot of the ceiling perhaps, you'll see that the ceiling is also completely exposed concrete. Now, some new units, especially lofts, are intentionally made like this, but this was not the story with this unit. That's right, you heard me exactly right. The sellers of this unit, without permission of the condo board, stripped away the concrete ceiling and the concrete flooring. That is to say, no other unit in this building has exposed concrete floor or ceiling. Now, this is a humongous risk for any buyer to take on. That's even putting aside the fact that the exposed concrete look, both in terms of the floor, both in terms of the ceiling, is not everyone's cup of tea. My clients loved it. They found it very aesthetically pleasing. It was in their aesthetic palette. But not a lot of buyers share that opinion. So this was the first item, the first most major item that showed me when I reviewed the status certificate and the current condition of the unit, that this listing was a distressed sale. Any person who would like this unit would have to take on a lot of risk. The risk namely being that they're buying a exposed concrete unit that the condo board may ask them to return to its original condition at the owner's own expense. And anyone who puts their name on the title of this property is taking on that risk. And when it comes down to risk, it depends. What is your risk tolerance? Because for a lot of buyers, this total risk is a deal breaker, and I would agree with them. But for my client, we thought we could use this to our advantage to negotiate a hefty discount on the purchase. And this unit had a very, very difficult time selling. That's exactly right. It was previously listed 4 times. Once it was listed at $649,000, it didn't sell. Then it was listed at $615,000. One other time, they attempted to list around $600,000. Finally, when they listed it around $580,000, that is when we saw it. And we managed to buy this unit for $525,000. The lowest purchase price in the history of the entire building. No other unit has ever sold lower than that purchase price for a 1-bedroom in this building, and no other unit will ever sell lower than that price. I'm very confident in saying that because this was special circumstances. And putting aside the concrete aesthetic of the unit itself is not that sizable. It is on the smaller side for a 1-bedroom. Now in this case, my client is a first-time home buyer, they're a student, they're very, very flexible with the size. They're probably not gonna be home often between school and work, and the location was the main attraction point. And it has your typical side kitchen, basically everything you would need, but nothing in excess, both in terms of size and space. So I already mentioned the status of the unit, the fact that the owners, the sellers, changed a lot about the unit in terms of ceiling and flooring without the permission of the condo board, and the status of certificate, the bill of health of the condominium corporation stated that the owners at any time were liable to return the unit back to its original condition at the owner's expense. And for us to buy this unit, that was a major risk. So that's one of the things I used to negotiate down the price, because to be fair, my client was taking on a major risk. The second item, the second thing I would point to say that this was a distressed sale and would give us an opportunity to take advantage of the situation to our benefit on the buyer side, would be the seller situation at the time of selling this property. Now, of course, I'm not gonna reveal too much out of fairness. However, it was a product of a divorce sale. And that's very, very sad. Like, I don't wanna make light of that. It's very hard to get divorced. Not fun whatsoever. And I kind of even feel a little bit bad about mentioning that and, you know, kind of taking advantage of that. But ultimately, my job as a buyer's agent is to kind of get the best deal for my client. And unfortunately, when it is a cooler market with higher interest rates, it's a unit that has its own peculiar condition, all those things combined with the fact that the owners are having a tumultuous time, well, kind of gives us a recipe to get something way below market value. Now, I've mentioned that a couple of times, way below market value. I told you this was listed above the 600s. We bought it for $525,000. When we bought it, it was listed for around the 580s. And you guys know me from this channel. I always go through the market comparables. I know condos pretty well. I know the downtown market pretty well. A lot of quantitative content on this channel. And those clients who have worked with me know that I justify every estimate, every opinion with an example. I say all that to say that fair market value for this property in the market we bought it for that did not have these problems would have probably been $590,000 to $600,000. So I'm very confident in saying that we bought this property significantly below market value, and I'm very satisfied with the work I did. But of course, this unit was not all bad. There's a lot of good about this unit. It was just the risks that we were willing to take on for the good. So speaking of the good, let me show you a couple of things that is really special for a unit of this size. So now you're looking onto the washroom, and the thing about this unit, right, it's on the smaller side. It's only around 530 to 535 square feet, not including the gigantic terrace that we'll get to. However, one of the main attributes, one of the attracting points for this unit was the washroom. And the washroom is actually quite large for this unit. The washroom, I dare to say, is larger than a lot of washrooms I've seen in 600 plus square feet units, which is sad, but it is the fact of the matter. Obviously, the stacked laundry is here into the washroom. You have a bathtub and a sink and a toilet. And once again, it's quite sizable for the size of the unit. All right, so I spoke about the terrace, and here we are, the gigantic terrace that's honestly half the size of the unit that came with this unit. So this was the second main value proposition of this unit for my clients. Not only was the washroom quite big for the size of the unit, the terrace is around 200 square feet. And cameraman, let them really see, really good. Move back as much as you can. Keep moving back, keep moving back. This terrace will add a lot onto the resale value of the unit, and particularly the rental value of the unit. Now, one thing that's really key, and could potentially actually ruin your enjoyment of a terrace, because keep in mind, this is on the lower floor, and you'll see it's quite close to the intersection of Lakeshore and Bathurst. So yes, street noise to the terrace could be an issue, but thankfully, as we saw on the inside, this building is built really well in terms of insulation. So we did not hear any of the noise at the intersection of Lakeshore and Bathurst or on the street inside of the unit. So yes, it is on the 3rd floor. The terrace is huge. Of course, ultimately it's downtown Toronto. If you have such a humongous terrace, you're on the 3rd floor, you're pretty close to the street. On the terrace, you're gonna hear the city, but inside the unit, you're not, and that's the key point. Secondly, the number 2 thing that was very key when purchasing a terrace, and this is probably more important in my opinion than the street noise, is what's above the terrace. Now, a huge terrace like this, if above it is a bunch of balconies, can actually function as a net for the debris that's going to fall. In terms of water, melting ice, regular everyday normal debris that people have on their balcony. Well, thankfully, cameraman, pan up and you'll see that there aren't any major balconies on top of this terrace. At best, you have some very, very small Juliets that are essentially just windows that open. And this is very key, I cannot stress you enough. When I was looking on MLS and Realtor.ca for my clients, and my clients saw this unit, the very first thing I said is, the terrace has potential. However, we have to visit the unit in person to make sure that there aren't just a bunch of balconies stacked on top of this unit. And thankfully for us, that was not the case whatsoever. And of course, the location is part of the package. At Lakeshore and Bathurst, you can see the intersection right there. However, for centrality, you sacrifice peace and quiet, at least on the balcony, right? You don't want to do that inside the unit. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the unit. Okay, so here we are in the final part of the unit. Smaller unit, not a lot to say. We've seen most of it, but this is obviously the bedroom. Now the bedroom is on the smaller side, right? Just enough to fit a double, but it has a good degree of closet space. And once again, let's keep in mind the profile of my buyer, right? A student, first-time home buyer. It's not gonna be their forever home. Eventually, when they upgrade, they're probably gonna rent this out. Anyways, that is it for today's video. Another edition of what your money can buy in Toronto real estate. This time, a downtown Toronto condo unit, 1 bedroom for $525,000. As always, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty. You can find my contact information in the description box. Feel free to subscribe or follow. Get in touch with any other questions you may have. A lot of interesting content, as always, on this channel. Stay tuned for more. Thank you very much. Stay safe.